Hi, I'm Sarah from Creative Ramblings, and I'm going to give you a heat embossing tutorial today. Heat embossing is a technique that takes your stamped image and adds a shiny, raised texture to it, giving interest to your paper crafts. There's two methods to doing this. The first method is going to involve a stamp, a piece of cardstock, a clear watermark ink, and a colored embossing powder of your choice. You're also going to need a heat gun. Now when you're doing this, you want to work quickly so your ink doesn't dry and you get the best texture possible. So the first thing I'm going to do is get ink on my stamp, push down nice and firm, and then add the embossing powder of my choice. Just sprinkle it all over the image. Now you're not going to be able to see that image until you get the powder on it. To clean up my excess in powder here, I'm going to take a separate piece of paper and tap it off. You can see that image there. Tap it on the back a little bit. And then I'm going to take my heat gun and I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to start in the top corner, and I'm going to point it at that corner until it turns a nice shiny color. And it just takes a moment. And once that turns, I'm going to move my gun down to the next part of the image and just work in a pattern so I make sure I get everything. You want to make sure you don't overheat your image. You can risk burning the paper or just getting that embossing powder very bubbly, which is not attractive. That's all it takes. And if I get this nice and close here, you can see that it's got a nice shiny texture. Now the color of this flower here is the color of my embossing powder. The ink was clear. The other method that you can use is a colored ink. Now for this you want to use a pigment ink that's going to accept an embossing color. So in this example, my flower is going to be the color of my ink, and I'm going to use clear embossing powder. Now this is a great trick I learned a while ago. You take your clear embossing powder, you put it in a container, and you use a spoon, and I'll show you why that's so helpful. So same technique. You take your stamp, you ink it up, and put it on your paper. And you can see that pink. That pink is going to stay. Now you take your clear embossing powder and just sprinkle it over the top. And tap it back into the container. Then you can keep reusing this. You're not making a mess. I always move my embossing powder out of the way when I turn on my heat gun so I don't damage the main container. Turn on my heat gun and I do the same thing again. Now this is just going to make that image nice and shiny and raised. Same process, start in the corner until it starts to turn. And then slowly move it down. You want to hold your heat gun about an inch, maybe 2 away, and hold it on an angle. You can kind of see it starting to turn here. Now another tip, if your paper starts to curl at all, you can turn it over and just point it at the back a little bit, and that gets your wrinkles out. So you can see here, both images have a little bit of shine to them. Here's the first one with the colored embossing powder, and the second one with the colored ink and the clear embossing powder. So there are 2 tutorials for making a stamp, add a little extra interest to your paper crafts. Thanks for visiting.